welcome back to the Michael Lofton Show on Reason and Theology. Well, as we expected, Bishop Joseph Strickland has been removed from ministry, so he is no longer over the Diocese of Tyler, Texas. I mean, we've seen this coming. I've been hinting at it, saying that it's, likely to happen. And the reason why is I already knew a month and a half ago that Pope Francis had made this decision. I just wasn't in a position to publicly come out and actually say that. But I've been, doing my best to kind of prepare people for that news in light of that fact. And so here we are. We're going to see what Rome has said. We're going to see what Strickland has said in response to his removal. Also, I have a couple a couple priests from the Diocese of Tyler, Texas, who are going to share with us their statements. One is going to remain anonymous. Another one has agreed to share his name. And so that will also help give some insight on why this happened. And then lastly, I'll also recap some of the concerns that I've had with the Bishop of Tyler, Texas. Like I said, I've interviewed him on the show multiple times. I think he's a really nice guy. I think he's sincere. But I also think that he has been misdirected and gone down a very alarming path. Though I'm sure it's not his intention, that is still the direction that he has gone. And I'm going to substantiate that with some of my concerns towards the end. But let's first of all see the news from the Vatican first before we look at his statement as well as the statement of various priests. So right here, it's very clear on the Vatican website, press.vatican.va. The Holy Father has removed Bishop Joseph Strickland from the pastoral care of the Diocese of Tyler, Texas, United States of America, and has appointed Bishop Joe Vasquez of Austin as apostolic administrator of the same diocese, rendering it sede vacante. So currently, it does not have a bishop. So Pope Francis will, likely appoint somebody soon, but until then, the Bishop of Austin is the apostolic administrator. So very clearly, straight from Rome, we can see it's very clearly verified that he has been removed. He was first asked 2 days ago if he would be willing to resign. He declined, as he said that he would. He's been saying for several months now that if he's asked, he is not going to resign. So we expected that. And then, of course, 2 days later, the Holy Father went ahead and made that decision for him, since he wasn't able to make that himself. And so let's see what Bishop Strickland has said. But first, let me actually give you a couple statements. Here's one from the USCCB, and then let me also give you one from Cardinal DiNardo. Pope Francis has relieved Most Reverend Joseph Strickland from the pastoral governance of the Diocese of Texas. These provisions were publicized in Washington, D.C., November 11, by Cardinal Christophe Pierre, the Apostolic Nuncio. And here is the statement from Cardinal DiNardo that gives us a little bit more information than what we've seen so far from the Vatican and USCCB. Here's what he says. He says, in June of this year, the Holy Father, Pope Francis, directed that an apostolic visitation of the Diocese of Tyler, Texas, should be conducted. Bishop Dennis Sullivan of Camden and Bishop Emeritus Gerald Canas of Duskin were appointed to conduct the visitation. The prelates conducted an exhaustive inquiry into all aspects of the governance and leadership of the Diocese of Tyler by its ordinary Bishop Joseph Strickland. As a result of the visitation, the recommendation was made to the Holy Father that the continuation in office of Bishop Strickland was not feasible. All right, so what were they looking for? Issues related to governance and leadership. That's pretty vague. Now, I have been told that there is going to be something else that is released that is going to give more details on what the concerns were. So right now we don't have a whole lot of details, but I've been told that's coming. But so far it just keeps it vague, governance and leadership. And there were issues related to that made it not feasible. The statements that I'm going to read to you from various priests from his diocese also shed light on this. It continues: after months of careful consideration by the dicastery for bishops and the Holy Father, the decision was reached that the resignation of Bishop Strickland should be requested. Having been presented with this request on November 9th, and so that's just 2 days ago, Bishop Strickland declined to resign from office. Thereafter, on November 11th, which is today, the Holy Father removed Bishop Strickland from the office of Bishop of Tyler. Pending more permanent arrangements for the Diocese of Tyler, the Holy Father has at the same time appointed Bishop Joe Vasquez, Bishop of Austin, as apostolic administrator. Let us keep Bishop Strickland, the clergy, and the faithful of the Diocese of Tyler, and Bishop Vasquez in our prayer. Yeah, truly tragic, because I think that Bishop Strickland really had a lot of good qualities and could have been a great, great bishop in his territory, as I've said many, many times. But there were a few things that I think kept him from fully carrying that out, unfortunately, and it got the best of him. Here's what Strickland is saying. Let's read his response. Then I will read to you what some of his priests are saying. Okay. Full statement saying Pope Francis teaching on Holy Communion. Oh, I'm sorry. This is a different one. I'll read that to you later. Hold on. This is the one right here. Bishop Strickland reacts to removal by Pope Francis. I feel very much at peace. He says, I know I didn't implement Traditionis Custodes because I can't starve out part of my flock, Bishop Strickland told me. That's a very wild thing to say at this moment. I kind of wonder how that relates really to the subject at hand. Pope Francis did not remove him from implementing Traditionis Custodes, to my knowledge, and according to every source that I have. So to bring this up, I'm wondering if he just brings that up to get people who are sympathetic to that argument on board with him. I don't know. Early this morning, the Vatican released the shocking news that Pope Francis has relieved Bishop Joseph Strickland of his position as Bishop of the Diocese of Tyler. Knowing that Bishop Strickland is up very early, I ventured to give him a call moments after the news came down that Pope Francis had removed him. But he answered, obviously already awake. Noon, Rome time, is when he was removed. But for him, that translates into 5 a.m. in Texas. I'm interviewing him later today, but I wanted to give you a little of His Excellency's first reaction. It says, I was awkward, speechless, and at a loss for what to say, other than telling this great man of love and thanks for the faithful have for his heroic witness to Christ and his unchanging faith. I'm going to give you a different side of the story in a little bit. Bishop Strickland started with a prayer before we spoke, and then he let me know. He said he was a little dazed, but at peace. Here is a snippet of our conversation, which will continue in our interview later today. Bishop Strickland said, I stand by all the things that were listed as complaints against me. I know I didn't implement Traditionis Custodes, the Pope Francis decree restricting the traditional Latin Mass, because I can't starve out part of my flock. Wow, that's weird. So that flock would be starved? So in other words, they can't be fed by the Novus Ordo? Having them attend a Novus Ordo liturgy is starving them out? That's a very odd comment, but he continues. He added, I do it the same way again. I feel very much at peace in the Lord and the truth that he died for. So unfortunately, he doesn't see that maybe there was some behavior on his part that led to this, and it was behavior not related to implementing Traditionis Custodes. So it seems very odd to bring this up as if that's kind of the deal breaker between him and Pope Francis, when there are some other issues that have been cited so far and are much more problematic than not implementing Traditionis Custodes. So I honestly wonder if this is just kind of a ploy to get people on his side who are already sympathetic to we hate Traditionis Custodes kind of stuff, you know. So that's a little disappointing. Let me read to you a couple statements here Here is the one by an anonymous priest. He has agreed to come on my show in a few weeks, but right now he wants to let things cool down. It's still very raw for him. But right now I'm keeping his name anonymous. He says, notice how Strickland never takes responsibility in any of his public comments. And I suppose he's referring to the one we just read, where he basically says, I think I did the right thing and I wouldn't change anything. The priest says he has heard a lot of priests, deacons, religious, and laity over the past 10 years. This is partly why he is being removed. So, not because of traditionis custodes or something like that. He is a narcissistic leader that feeds on his adoring crowds who believe in his divisive ideology. In the coming weeks, I'll explain to you what happened, but right now I'm at peace with a very bad leader in his removal. Sounds like there's some, spiritual wounds going on there. I don't know what all took place. Sounds like this priest has been through a lot in dealing with Bishop Strickland for the last 10 years. And I imagine we'll find out more whenever he comes on and explains that. But you can see that in the language used here. It seems pretty raw. Here is another one. Now, he has agreed for me to share his information. In fact, I'm going to be publishing this on RNT on the website. But here is his letter that he has agreed to share. We're going to read it together. Again, also a priest of the Diocese of Tyler, kind of giving us some insight here. Statement of Father Timothy Kelly, pastor of Most Holy Trinity Catholic Church of the Diocese of Tyler, on the removal of Bishop Strickland. He says, I think it's important to say that many decent, good people have been hurt under his administration. And by the way, this is a different priest than the one I just read to you, even though they sound similar. I can assure you, I know the names of I know the name of the other one. It's a different priest. He says, I think it's important to say that many decent, good people have been hurt under his administration. 7 years ago, something dark descended upon the Diocese of Tyler. Under the direction of Bishop Joseph Strickland, charity was replaced in his diocese. Good, decent Catholic people who have served at the diocese for a generation were fired without as much as a thank you. Their hurt has never been recognized, nor has an apology ever been made. And as I understand it, this was a pretty big factor in the apostolic visitation. Not the only one, but this certainly factored in. Let's see. It continues, priests who disagreed with the bishop were intimidated by his supporters. I can personally attest to such phone calls from prominent friends of his bishop. The bishop appointed people to positions of authority who are unworthy of those positions. Thank God that most of them were later fired once the bishop felt that they were a threat to his authority. Every month, things in his diocese have gone steadily down and down. And this is, again, reminding us of the common theme that we've been hearing, and that is poor management of the diocese. And I suppose we're going to be getting more details now that he has been removed. Bishop Strickland's well-being must be our primary concern today. He has been at war for the last few years. He has been manipulated and used by ruthless men. I've been telling you that. I think Bishop Strickland is a good guy, but I think he is easy to manipulate because he doesn't have a strong point of reference. And you can even see that in one of his talks with the Rome Life Forum, where it's very clear he has this overly simplistic understanding of the faith, almost infantile in nature. A little alarming to see that from a bishop. And you can clearly see a person like that could be easily molded one way or another by people who surround him, who are bad influences. So he says he has been manipulated and used by ruthless men, both laity and priests of his diocese, whose goal was to use the diocese and the bishop to push their extremist ideological agenda. I'm not saying that Bishop Strickland is not responsible for his words, however, but some very unsavory men have influenced him. I can tell. I can absolutely tell that. And I don't even have to be in the Diocese of Tyler to tell that. It is essential that Bishop Strickland be given time to rest and come to terms with the disaster he had drawn upon himself and on us. It is important that he have some time for counseling and therapy. I wish him the best for his new life. In the past Bishop Strickland was a nice, unassuming, likable man. But in his addiction to celebrity, he has ruined lives and ruptured decades-long friendships. Families have stopped going to mass because of his unkind words. Parents have taken their children out of Catholic schools. He needs time for reflection. He needs time to rebuild the bridges he burned. Bishop Strickland needs to step away from the cameras and microphone and submit himself to the authority of the Supreme Pontiff. I agree with that. I do agree that he needs to step away from his dissent against the papal magisterium. But more on that here in a moment. Something dark has descended upon the Diocese of Tyler. St. Peter was given the keys of the kingdom. The Bishop of Rome has spoken. That is the end of the matter. And he quotes Augustine of Hippo. Well, again, we're going to be seeing more from various priests from the Diocese of Tyler, Texas. We're going to be offering their thoughts. I appreciate Father for also giving us his perspective here. Very helpful. Now, let's let's continue here, because I want to remind you of a couple things that have happened that have also factored in, I would imagine. This was back in 2022 of September. A lot of people aren't aware of this. A lot of people still see Bishop Strickland as this solid, traditional theological giant, this traditional Catholic. And I want to say, wait, hold on. Is it traditional to accuse the papal magisterium of heresy? The answer is no. And yet that is exactly what Bishop Strickland has done for about a little over a year now, since September 16th of 2022. He signs a document, first on the list. I brought it up at the time. Most people overlook this, but I said, wait, this is a problem. Signs a document that condemns Pope Francis's teaching in Desiderio Desideravi as contrary to a dogma of the Catholic Church, thereby accusing the Pope of heresy, as the article itself describes. Heresy is what they are accusing him of. And it's not just him who is on the list. It's some of the other usual suspects. Well, Gracida, who's a sedevacantist, and then Schneider, Altman, who's now also a sedevacantist. A lot of these guys have gone sedevacantist since then. Deacon Nick Donnelly, Deacon Keith Fournier, Matt Gaspers. We have Peter Kwasniewski on here, John Lamont. We have Brian McCall, Father Gerald Murray, George Newmeyer. We have John Rist, Eric Sammons, and all kinds. Dr. Michael Cirilla over at Steubenville, Anthony Stein, John Henry Weston, and so on. All publicly accused the Pope of teaching heresy, not in some off-the-cuff statement on an airplane, but no, in Desiderio Desideravi, an apostolic letter, which is magisterial. So they're accusing the magisterium of teaching heresy. And that is a massive problem, because this is contrary not only to Dona Veritatis, but also the Eighth Ecumenical Council. As I've been reading to y'all the acts of the Eighth Ecumenical Council, saying that 2 patriarchs were condemned for this foolishness. Patriarch Photius, anathematized, and Dioscorus of Alexandria, anathematized for doing this. So what is being done here is in no way acceptable. And I imagine this factored in with his apostolic visitation. Look, when you accuse the Pope of teaching heresy, yeah, I could totally understand why you would be removed from ministry. But not only that, I also did a video last week showing a very troubling letter that Bishop Strickland shared at the Rome Life Forum. A very horrible, and in fact, demonically inspired letter, where the author of the letter clearly states that Pope Francis isn't the Pope. He's a usurper. Benedict was really the Pope, so Francis isn't a Pope. And saying things like Pope Francis promotes the voice of Satan. And the Bishop of Tyler at the time, Strickland, shares this letter, praises the guy as a wonderful Catholic, shares this letter to everyone at the Rome Life Forum, telling them it's for their benefit, because this was a private letter written to him, but he decided to share it with everybody. He says, this is for your benefit. He nowhere says, hey, I don't agree with this stuff about the Pope not being the Pope. Instead, he puts it forward for everyone's benefit. So he never says, hey, I agree with this part, but he effectively says that by promoting this letter to all the people present. And it's exactly what Father James Martin type of people do, where they might not come out and say, I believe that the church is wrong about its teaching on homosexuality. They might not say that explicitly, but they clearly are saying that in everything that they promote. Now, my personal view about Bishop Strickland is, and I totally could be wrong, I personally don't think that Strickland is a set of a contest yet. I do think that he believes Pope Francis is Pope, but he clearly felt sharing this set of a contest propaganda was worth sharing to everyone present and was helpful for their benefit. In other words, he felt this was worth floating around. So even if he doesn't agree that Pope Francis isn't the Pope, he perfectly sees it as a tolerable view. In fact, one, this should be floated around at this conference. Otherwise, he wouldn't have shared that part. Or at the very least, offered some kind of qualification, which he doesn't. So again, I personally don't think that he has a set of a contest, but he sees it as a tolerable view, which also would then explain why he hasn't come out and condemned Altman, who he has previously promoted. It explains why he hasn't come out and condemned him once Altman went set of a contest. Now, what does this mean in the future? Well, again, I do believe we are going to see explicitly various reasons for his removal. I've been told that that's forthcoming from Rome. We'll see. We'll see if it's true. Usually the source who tells me these things is pretty accurate. So I imagine we're going to hear something. And in fact, I think we should hear something because frankly, what we've heard from Rome so far, I kind of feel is, yeah, I think we need a little bit more than that. You know, whether you agree with Strickland or not, I think we should hear more than we've just kind of investigated his governance and leadership and felt that, you know, he's failed in that area. I think we need a little bit more than that. You know, whether you agree with him or not, I think we probably should be given more so that we can know if there's another bishop doing these things, that this is something to avoid. And other bishops too can know to avoid it. So I think it'll be helpful for them to come out and give us a little bit more than that. From what I can tell from all the various sources that I've been able to examine, it seems a huge part of his removal was the governance of his diocese. It seems that he lost the confidence of an important amount of priests in his diocese. And there were some very troubling decisions that were made in the administration of the diocese. And he, again, lost the confidence of a lot of his clergy. It seems that was a big issue. But then also his comments on social media, I think, just fanned the flames, added fuel to the fire. Saying things like Pope Francis has a program of undermining the faith. In other words, it's intentional. Pope Francis is trying to undermine the faith. You know, saying stuff like that as a bishop, never a good idea, but that comes on the heels of him already having publicly condemned the papal magisterium for teaching heresy. So I wasn't too surprised when he said that on Twitter, but a series of messages like that. And y'all remember at the time of his apostolic visitation, I came here on Reason of Theology and I said, look, I think Bishop Strickland could still be a great bishop in his diocese. He still has a lot of good qualities. So I think he could still be a good bishop. But what he needs to do is back away from social media. Don't attack the Pope. Don't portray yourself as a martyr. And instead, What does he do? The very next day, goes right back to social media, portrays himself as a martyr. I'm a John the Baptist kind of thing. I'm being persecuted for speaking the truth. You can even see it here. Well, it's because I didn't implement Traditionis Custodes and I didn't want to starve my flock. That's why this is happening. And it's just delusional compared to the actual facts. Not only that, but we've seen some even more alarming developments where Bishop Strickland, as of July, has been saying things like he had this interior allocution from the Virgin Mary, who told him that he is going to be a martyr for preaching the truth. And okay, even if that is an interior allocution that he received and it's legitimate, I don't think that that means he's going to be martyred by Rome. But it seems that is the way he has taken that alleged interior allocution. And I do say alleged because we don't even know that that's authentic. But assuming it is, I think he, at the very least, misunderstood that interior allocution. Because he clearly understands this to be, he is going to be martyred for preaching the truth over and against Rome, over and against Pope Francis. And this is how schism begins every time in church history. I'm not saying that Bishop Joseph Strickland is going to start a schism. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that is how it starts, though. When you set yourself in opposition to Rome like this is how it happens every time. And if you are deluded to the point that you think that the Virgin Mary has called you personally to be a martyr for the truth over and against Rome, then there's nothing to check you. There's nothing to correct you, because you can't appeal to the magisterium. You can't say, hold on, wait, the magisterium is correcting this and you need to be subordinate to the magisterium. You can't, because that person is going to say, no, they have this extraordinary mission from the Virgin Mary. Now, if you do have an extraordinary mission, according to Francis de Sales, you would have miracles to back it up. So unless he can produce some kind of miracles, I'm not buying it. One needs to submit to Rome and its authority and its teaching authority, which he is currently in dissent against, as I've already demonstrated earlier. So it's a little troubling to see that. I don't know where he's going to go with this in the future, but here's what I think is going to happen. Well, at least it's likely to happen, but I sure hope it doesn't happen. Bishop Strickland has surrounded himself with very problematic figures. The people who are advising him have clearly failed him, but I don't know if he's going to change his advisors and close friends. It seems like the people close to him, surrounding him, they don't have the right perspective. They're on the wrong side of church history here. But I think that they're feeding him a lot of fake news. So he's buying into this stuff. And he's then seeing Rome in a particular way based on that fake news. And then they're also feeding him bad theology. So I think what's likely to happen is you're going to see, unfortunately, Bishop Strickland spiral out of control. I think that's what's going to happen. I hope I'm wrong. I sure hope I'm wrong. I would love to come here on YouTube and say, I was so wrong. Absolutely. You bet. Let's bet on it. I'll come back here on YouTube, let's say a year from now, and he hasn't spiraled out of control a year from now. He's rather being quiet. He's assenting to the magisterium. He retracts his accusations against the papacy. He's doing the right thing. I will come on here a year from, way before a year from now. I'll come on here and apologize and say, I was so wrong, and I'm happy to be wrong. But I think, unfortunately, that's probably not going to be the case just looking at the trajectory. I think what this is going to do is it might cause some bitterness, some resentment, but it will certainly, he is no longer tethered to his local diocese at this point. And I think him having been tethered was containing him to an extent. No longer being tethered to a diocese under Rome, I think what you're going to start to see from him is full-time ministry, warning against the problems in the church. Some of his criticisms will be legitimate. Some of them will go too far. But unfortunately, with the people he's surrounding himself with, I think it will spiral to the point that you will eventually see Bishop Strickland saying things like, well, maybe Pope Francis isn't the Pope. I honestly think it's going to come to that. I think you're going to see sedevacantism developing from this. I hope I'm wrong. I also hope he doesn't begin to participate in illicit ordinations with other bishops who are currently in dissent against Rome. Bishops who are promoting sedevacantism, certain archbishops who are promoting sedevacantism. Hopefully, he doesn't join in with them in their illicit ordinations that they've been having behind the scenes. Y'all may not have heard about this publicly, but make no mistake that some of these things are taking place behind the scenes. I won't give any more details at this moment, but I hope he doesn't join forces with such groups and begin illicitly ordaining people and even overseeing this parallel church that is beginning to form right before our very eyes. What parallel church am I referring to? Well, in addition to illicit ordinations, you also have some rogue bishops out there overseeing illicit liturgies, illicit masses, not in communion with the local bishop. They'll say otherwise, but of course, the local bishop doesn't approve of this, so it's not in communion with them. And you'll see them overseeing illicit liturgies being said in disobedience to both Rome and the local bishop in the territory of a bishop who does not approve of this, which, I mean, Ignatius of Antioch, 2nd century, is going to tell you this is the very essence of schism. They're overseeing some of this stuff, and that is the beginning of a parallel church. That is the beginning of a schismatic church. It's already being established. You can see articles written about this by LifeSite News. They almost brag about doing this, about this little parallel church that they have. They don't call it a parallel church. They say, oh, it's in line with canon law, when it's actually not in line with canon law, and it's a parallel church. So, of course, they'll pitch it as something that's legitimate, but in fact, it's schism. I'm hoping that Bishop Strickland won't join that movement and to begin to oversee some of those things, or even participate in illicit ordinations for that and other movements. That's what I'm hoping. Now, with the people he's surrounding himself with, I could certainly see them recruiting him for that ministry. And that would be unfortunate. So I do unfortunately think that he is going to spiral out of control. It's probably going to happen pretty quickly because I've already seen in the last, 4 months, a very rapid development and progress towards radical traditionalism. And that was while he was still tethered to his diocese. Now that this has happened, there's nothing to stop him from spiraling out of control very, very quickly. I hope that's not the case, though. And I ask y'all to pray for Bishop Strickland. Please pray for his discernment, that he would do the right thing, that he would become more introspective here. And instead of just saying, oh, I would do it again, step back and ask, what could have I done better? And what did I do that led me to this? A person who is disciplined, or, I mean, just think of somebody who's arrested. You have two different kinds of people who are arrested. The one who says, oh, I didn't do anything wrong, I'm innocent, they're just persecuting me. Versus the one who finds themselves in a jail cell and they say, you know what? I need to find, what did I do that led me here? What did I do that led me here? And what can I do to change that so that I don't remain here in the future? I hope that he starts asking those questions instead of this knee-jerk reaction that we just got from him in his interview with LifeSite News, with more to come. Instead of that, instead of the, oh, I would do it all again, I'm just being persecuted, I'm just a martyr, take a step back, ask what could you have done better. I'll tell you, I'll give you an answer. First of all, don't condemn the papal magisterium for teaching heresy. That would be number one. Number two, stop tweeting on social media, undermining the papacy. And number three, don't promote sedevacantist propaganda. Even if you don't agree with it, don't promote it. Condemn it explicitly. Don't promote this stuff. Don't promote anything that equates Pope Francis's voice with the voice of Satan. Don't do that. That would be a good place to start, at least in my opinion. And maybe also talk to some of the clergy who would give you feedback and say, "Hey, here's what you could have done better, and here's some of my concerns, and here's what they were." Maybe talk to them and make some changes. That's what I'm hoping will happen. But just knowing people, it's likely not to happen. And from seeing his reaction so far, that's likely not going to be the path he's taken. But we can pray that he'll choose to go the other way. So there will be more developments to this later on whenever Strickland gives his full interview to LifeSite News. I'm sure I'll cover that then. And there will be, I imagine, other developments coming out, perhaps priests issuing new statements and stuff like that. And again, even Rome coming out and telling us more specifics. So I'll certainly cover that whenever there are some more developments. But hopefully this has been helpful for you. I know this video and others makes me very unpopular. I'm telling people what they don't want to hear. I know people are very angry by what I've said today, but just ask yourself, is what I said true? And if it's not, show me where I'm wrong. Don't just tell me I'm wrong. Show me where I'm wrong. Show me how it was appropriate for Bishop Strickland to say that the Pope is teaching heresy in Desiderio Desideravi. Show me that the Pope is a heretic. Okay, prove that to me. And if you can't do that, then maybe you should understand, okay, well, maybe I have a point there. Or tell me how this letter that he reads to the Rome Life Forum is not an implicit promotion of the content in there in light of all of the circumstances surrounding him reading that letter. Please tell me how that's not a promotion of this content. In addition to other things like Pope Francis has a program of undermining the faith. Show me how that is the case. So Pope Francis is intentionally trying to undermine the faith and has this plan to destroy the deposit of faith. Show me that. Explain that to me. Because everything that I've seen so far doesn't match up with that. Now, I know there's also going to be a lot of people who say, well, why is it that Strickland is disciplined, but maybe not this, the German Bishops' Conference or the Flemish Bishops' Conference? Well, look, in some ways, I'm sympathetic insofar as I've been saying, yeah, those guys need to go. So, I mean, I'm right there with you insofar as they need to go. Now, replacing an entire Episcopal conference is obviously going to be different than replacing one individual bishop. Especially if you replace an entire Episcopal conference, what's likely to happen with an entire Episcopal conference that has been removed? Well, they're likely to still remain in their churches and still continue their local government in those churches. That's called a schism. It would likely result in another parallel church, but of a massive size compared to what we have going on with the radical traditionalists. It would be another German Reformation, if you will. And so I think Pope Francis has been trying to avoid another Reformation in Germany. He's explicitly said that. He's told the German bishops, stop what you're doing. He's told them that not only in his magisterium, but he has continued to reassert to them, we already have one Protestant church in Germany. We don't need another. But, at some point you got to do more than just say things, right? You have to implement disciplinary measures, and maybe there are some other disciplinary measures that he can and will implement that won't result in a schism, and I'm hoping that will take place. And I think he needs to do so sooner rather than later. But I also have quite a few videos on the issues related to the German bishops, so certainly go and check those out. I also have a lot of other bishops related videos related to Bishop Strickland. If y'all want to watch those, I'll put those in the show notes. Go and check them out. It will give you a little bit more details that will explain how we got to this point. And yeah, I will continue to cover news as it comes up in the future. Please hit that like button and the subscribe button. Help support me here at this channel if you believe in what I'm doing, because again, I know this video is going to upset a lot of people. I know people are already upset about the news, and then me coming along and saying what I'm saying, people are just going to take it out on me. And you know what? So be it. That's fine. But if you want to help offset the fallout that I'm going to have with those people who are undoubtedly going to unsubscribe and stop supporting me, if you want to help offset the people who are going to cancel me, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Patreon.com/Reason and Theology is a great way to support me, or the PayPal or GoFundMe link there in the show notes. This is how I support my family. If you want me to continue to support my family by providing this kind of content, if you want me to continue to do this kind of work, so if you think I'm doing good work, please consider supporting me. Otherwise, I'll just need to do something else to provide for my family. But if you think that I'm filling a gap, if you think that I'm addressing the issues that need to be addressed and offering helpful contributions to these conversations, please consider supporting me. So again, patreon.com/Reason and Theology, and the GoFundMe and PayPal link there in the show notes. Okay, stay tuned for more. I imagine we'll get some more developments probably later on today. So look for another stream coming up soon. All right, we'll see you later. God bless. Hey, everybody. Just wanted to tell you about my new free ebook, Church Chaos, Biblical Insights for Confused Catholics. If you are a confused Catholic and you're thinking about leaving the Catholic Church, or you're thinking about converting to the church, but you see that there's a crisis in the church and you're just unsure, this is the book for you. Again, it is free. Just simply go to reasonandtheology.com. You'll see a pop-up that comes up on your screen. Just simply click on it and you'll put in your email and it will provide you the free PDF ebook right then and there. Please check it out if you're confused about the situation in the Catholic Church today. reasonandtheology.com. Are you a Catholic thinking about converting to Eastern Orthodoxy? Or are you a Protestant discerning whether or not to become Catholic or Eastern Orthodox? If so, I have the book just for you. It's called Answering Orthodoxy. It engages all of the arguments that Eastern Orthodox use against the Catholic Church. I respond to all of them. I show that they are in error, and in fact, they're inconsistent, because the things that Orthodox are objecting to are in fact found in their own tradition. So the fullness of the faith can only be found in the Catholic Church. Check out the book right now at shop.catholic.com for your copy today. Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button and the subscribe button. See you next time. God bless.